so much, Rebecca, for being here. I am so excited to have you here. Honestly, it's so exciting. It just feels like a circle has been complete.
Yes, well, I'm thrilled to be here. I'm so happy to see you again, looking radiant and full of energy. And it's wonderful to be able to return, after many years and continue the conversation. So that's quite wonderful. It's rare, you know.
Yeah.
So I really value this kind of continuity and connection.
Absolutely, and it's so interesting to be looking at one book after a book that you wrote so many years ago, which obviously is Baby Love that I've got down here, and but to talk about another subject that somehow all connects together at some point. So I'm really excited to sort of chat about Women Talk Money for sure because it's such an important subject. So
Mhm.
but without further ado, I'll do a quick introduction to the lovely Rebecca and then we'll go straight into it. That's okay.
Sounds great, honey. Let's do it.
Yay! So, of course, Rebecca Walker was chosen as one of Time magazine's 50 future leaders of America and is one of the most influential leaders of her generation. And I can attest to that for sure. She has made a substantial contribution to the global conversation about identity, power, culture, and the evolution of human family through books, lectures, blogs, social networks, popular magazines, literary and academic journals, radio programs, film, television appearances, and of course, all the content that she produces, even on her own website. So she actually graduated cum laude from Yale in '92, and of course, obviously now is waiting for her son to go and take the next step as well. So obviously, she's the author of the memoirs Black, White, and Jewish, which was fantastic, and Baby Love, the novel A Day, which you can see in the background, a love story, and editor of the anthologies To Be Real, What Makes a Man, One Big Happy Family, and Black Cool. Her writing has appeared in Glamour, The Washington Post, Bookforum, Bomb, Newsweek, Vibe, Real Simple, Modern Bride, Essence, More, and Interview, amongst many other magazines and literary collections. She has appeared on Charlie Rose's, and as well as Good Morning America, Oprah, Fresh Air, Bet, and dozens of blogs, sites, and other media. She lives in LA, and we're talking about her book in a very meta way, Women Talk Money, Breaking the Taboo. So this is exactly what we're doing as well.
Wow, that was a lot of stuff that I've done. I don't think I've heard such a complete bio in quite some time. It made me a little tired to think, oh my gosh, I've really done a lot of this for a long time. But yes, we're here to talk about my new book, Women Talk Money, Breaking the Taboo. And it is a very essential conversation. Um, and I'm thrilled to be able to share some of the insights and thoughts and feelings and projections that I have about the need for women to talk about money and what happens when we do.
Thank you so much, Rebecca, because exactly, I'm like, first of all, I've got to ask the obvious question, which is why do you think there is a taboo regarding talking about money in the first place? And like, what brought you to actually writing about this?
Well, I think that there are many different reasons for this taboo. I think the idea of women talking about money fundamentally has been constructed as something that is, problematic, undesirable. We should always keep it very secret because, in many ways, when we talk about it, it means that we are closer to being in control of it. And there have been many, many. Social constructs, i.e., patriarchy, that really do not want us to be in control of our own money and to spend money and make money in alignment with our internal goals and visions for ourselves and our communities. And so don't talk about it, because if you do, you are closer to being able to actually transform the world in which you lived through that money. So that's one reason. um, I decided to do this book right after the big recession in
Mm.
2008, when there were so many people, myself included, who were completely anxious about money, not sure where our next money was going to come from, losing jobs, losing houses, losing so much, and feeling this kind of existential angst around our own, sustainability.
Mm,
And one of the outcomes of that was that me and my cohort, all the different people in my life, especially my women friends and colleagues, started to talk very openly about money for the first
mm,
time in my life. Everyone, because it was all not everything we had to talk about, but it was a big thing to talk about because it was
mm,
always at the top of our minds. I mean, it still is, but then it was really just dire. And as a result of those communications or those conversations, um, a sort of greater intimacy opened and transparency and honesty. And I started to think, wow, each of us is really holding a powerful story about money, about what we learned
mm,
about money from childhood, and how that is shaping the way that we're moving through the world and our current relationship with money. And
mm,
that by beginning to talk, we are supporting each other in forging new ways to relate to money, and we are bonding more deeply as a community. And
mm,
so it occurred to me that um, this is an important conversation for women to have for themselves and their own personal evolution and with each other so that we can be more informed, more connected, and not sort of compartmentalizing our
mm,
financial realities away, right? And really, everything that happens in all consciousness raising groups, when you start
mm,
talking about your body, when you start talking about your sexuality, when you start talking about your racial identity, you start to realize that you are connected to a community. You are not alone, you are not
mm,
siloed. You are not isolated, which is what I think so many women think when they think about money. They think, "Oh, I didn't make enough money. I'm not good enough. I made so much money. There's something wrong with me based on the capitalist idea that I don't believe in." Whatever it is, they're carrying this idea that they're alone with their story, and they're not. And so as with all of my collections,
mm.
um, have wanted to really elevate and support all these different voices in the name of building greater webs of support and consciousness.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's so interesting because you're talking about communities and talking about this obviously has always been a bit of a taboo in the past. And so, how do you think money affects relationships? I'm like, does it affect those relationships even when you're in that kind of community? And does it cause like any kind of hierarchical issue in terms of
Yes,
money meaning power?
absolutely. And I think that's part of why it's important to talk about it. I think that there is so little consciousness around how our conversations and experiences with money affect our relationships, so that you know we, we have relationships with people of very different socioeconomic backgrounds, and we often speak different languages. We often have different approaches to the world, and we need to um, be able to understand where we come from so that we can find a place where we can connect, as opposed to being completely turned off by, well, this person is, super wealthy and is completely
Mm,
out of touch with my day-to-day reality, which I think, so many different people feel, or this person is really struggling at a level that I can't relate to, which is, uh, both of those things are not true. There is an intersection that can be found and must be found,
mm,
in order for us to bridge these unbelievable um, class disparities, socioeconomic realities, so that we can find ways to move together toward a more equitable world. Um, and so, and then I wanted to, in each of these essays, look at that exactly what you're saying. How has money affected um, the relationships that each of the writers has with people in their families and communities?
mm,
So, there are pieces by, incredible writers. I'm thinking Latham Thomas is one of my favorite,
mm,
writers and humans, and she's a maternal health leader and an incredible doula. And she writes about watching her mother go into the bank when she was very, very young. Her mother was a real estate agent, and her mother presented her commission check to the teller to be deposited. And the teller did not believe that a black woman could come to the bank with, a check that was over, $5, but it was in the thousands of dollars, and called the police. And Latham's experience, her first experience of money, was to see her mother, a black woman, criminalized for having money. And so she, held that story in the relationship with her mother, like, intimately, and then
Mhm.
also took that mythology, took that idea onto herself and integrated it into her own psychology, and had to work through this idea that being a black woman and having money and creating generational wealth, was something that was, not only an act of resistance, but
Mhm.
something that could be done,
Yeah.
and that facing down that fear was an important part of her journey. So, and then people, like, Sonali wrote this incredible piece, first generation immigrant, Indian immigrant, who writes about how her parents really tried to control her body through money, that she was a
Oh, yeah.
large person, a
Yeah.
queer person, and they, withheld money from her, because they wanted her to have gastric bypass. They wanted her to change her body to be more acceptable. And so her piece is about working through that moment, working through her relationships of anger and frustration
Mhm.
and grief within her own family, and then also talking about the culture of first generation immigrants in this country, the deep anxiety about sustainability again
Mhm.
and viability. And so wanting your child, which is, you can understand, to be more quote unquote successful, more
Mhm.
attractive, more, based on these standards that are inherently flawed and problematic.
Yeah.
And so she's working through that within her family, and then also speaking to this larger community, everyone who has been manipulated financially by money, in terms of, if you want to have a good job, if you want to have access to this place and that place, you must conform to a standard of beauty that
Mhm.
is different from who you are. So, she's really looking at how, um, money is affecting her relationships, both with herself, her family, her community, and the global politic of the
Mhm.
world. And every writer is doing that. Another, Neela Vaswani, who was a dear friend, writes about, being the caretaker of her husband who has
Mm.
cancer,
Yeah.
and the way in which she is the monitor of the insurance payments, of the bills, and how
Mhm.
it causes her to really reflect upon the role of women as caretakers, and how we are expected to provide a level of care that is not compensated but is invaluable, right, to our
Mhm.
families. And she questions what it means to be a wife, and she
Yeah.
has to sort of, you know, wrestle with how this, discrepancy, or how these identities that she has inherited of a wife caretaker, really, match up with who she wants to be and how she wants to be in her marriage. And
Mhm.
so that's another place where money and, the roles that we play are intersecting and causing us to reassess our positions in these relationships that have, sort of assumed, um, trajectories, and to get to the place where her piece is very interesting, to get to the place where she is kind of revisioning her idea of marriage, and able to sort of breathe into the flow of what she's doing and what her partner is doing, and not feel sort of oppressed by this role in the way that she would have if she was looking at it through a traditional lens, which
Mhm.
she had been carrying. So basically, all of the pieces, in one way or another, are asking people to excavate the myths that they're carrying about money, and to really try to free themselves. A lot of people have said, well, what's so interesting about this book is it's not, make your budget and invest in this way.
Yeah.
It's not that kind of book. It's the
No.
book that you read before you do that. It's the book that you
Mm.
read to understand what you are unconsciously thinking about money so that you can rewrite that story, and then you can start to invest based on this awakened view that you're now holding, that you yourself have cultivated, as opposed to what
Mhm.
has been brought to you and imposed upon you from the culture.
That's so interesting, and that's definitely what I felt when I was reading it. I was like, "My God, I didn't really think about, how much it sort of wraps up in your identity and how much it can really shape who you are,
Oh, yes.
intergenerationally even, but also the intersectionality of those identities through money was really interesting. And I have a sort of a vested sort of interest in this, but even Neela's story as well regarding sort of caretaker. We live in a system where illness is a very big business for some, especially big pharmaceutical companies. So, do you think the most vulnerable people are the ones who have, say, the most precarious financial situation, or is it more than that?
Well, I think that absolutely, in many ways, that is absolutely true. I mean, we live in a, hyper capitalist world, and, people who say that, you don't need money to be happy and all of that. I mean, at a certain level, okay, but you do need money to have a roof over your head. You need money to eat. You need money to have children, to have health care, to have all of these different things that are sort of baseline. So, for happiness and health. So absolutely, people who are struggling financially, who are not supported, in our country for sure, and
Mm.
the erosion of the social network, the way in which we support our citizens is really shameful, um,
Yeah.
and heartbreaking, and in need of greater government response and intervention.
Mhm.
So, and the result of those policies, right now they're talking about forcing people um, uh, to make certain statements and present all kinds of verification in order for them to get food stamps, like basic things like food, trying to cut the healthcare bill so that people cannot have access to healthcare. I mean, this is just cruelty, so, when we look at it from that perspective and we see the outcomes, we see, rampant homelessness,
Mhm.
unhoused communities. We see school systems that are failing, completely because they're not living in the right tax district, Then we see
Yeah.
the disparities, right, between these people who, get a fabulous first class education, can move through the world as, independent leaders and thinkers, and people who can barely, write and read because they have been so failed by these systems intentionally, I believe.
Yeah.
So, yes. And I think that the ways in which some communities have worked together in the face of those obstacles to pool the resources they have and to help their children and adults navigate this country and this system is also, a model that we need to look at and borrow from.
Mhm.
I mean,
Mhm.
immigrants in this country were all immigrants in one way or another. My people came enslaved on one side, and on the other side, they came as immigrants from the Ukraine, actually. Um,
Oh.
and but both experiences, um, have been shaped and marked by trying to get to a level of sustainability, trying to get to a level of respect, support, um, economic viability, and both communities, the Jewish community and the African American community, have used our resources as communities to help lift us up. And I think that is true in communities where there have been, very few resources, but there is this belief that together we rise. And I think
Mm.
that's very important, to keep believing in that and to find ways to, in small ways, large ways, to build our communities, right? Whether it's buying black, whether
Mm.
it's, contributing to um, historically black colleges, whether it's, doing social justice work around anti-Semitism, around the growth of communities, and then doing that for all of the different groups that are struggling. It's not just the ones we are born into. So yes, so it's both.
That's so interesting. Sorry, I was just
Yeah,
what
my
what
thing is
what is
making a lot of noises. I turned
it?
everything off, but I can't. Let me see if I can turn this off. I'm so sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I
Um,
think it's like some kind of messaging
it
thing.
is a messaging thing, but they're all off. Um, Let me just. I think that's. Hmm. Let me force. I'm sorry, everyone out there. I
Oh
hope.
no, that's okay.
Okay,
I think yeah, that I
that's
there's
one.
always like background things, isn't
I'm
there?
so sorry. It is, but I'm usually very conscious about turning them off. Okay, let's try that.
No problem. Well, again, this is so fascinating because, like, I found the stories just it was just so different each one, which I thought was really interesting. And there was one story I think by Sonia, if I'm not mistaken,
Uh-huh.
and she and I was wondering in terms of her story, do you think your money story can shrink your vision?
Yes, absolutely. And I think yes. Um, Sonia and Latham's story both have this overlap of being Black women being um, really challenged about having money. With Sonia's story, going in with $100 bill to buy something, having this shopkeeper doubt the fact that she got this $100 bill legitimately. And if you internalize those ideas, you start to believe that you are not entitled to money, that you should not have money. And
Mm,
and that can keep you from um, understanding your value, your financial, what understanding the reciprocity that needs to happen. What you're bringing to the world, making sure that others are respecting that and appreciating that, not just psycho emotionally, not just through accolades,
mm,
but through money, because money is what is going to allow you to continue to do that work. And so Sonia had to really come to understand that she was deserving of
mm,
both financial support from others and deserving um, of financial abundance.
mm,
And because she had this story that was about, I don't deserve it, she was very limited in her view.
mm.
And so that was very, very painful. And I love her piece too. I love all the pieces. I love all the women. So, yes is the answer to that question.
And of course, you said you love all these women. These women's stories are just so amazing. And but obviously what it shows is that, money seems to be incredibly gendered. And so how do we rebuild a world, our world, that gives everyone equal footing?
Well, I mean, that's the question of the ages, right? I mean, I think that, my contribution here with this book is primarily to support women in becoming more conscious of money, um, liberating themselves from old ideas about money, so that we create space to have a visionary approach to money. So, one of the pieces that's also quite moving to me is by Leah Hunt Hendricks, who is writing about what it was like to be the daughter of one of the wealthiest women in
Yeah.
America. And her story is very interesting because her parents raised her as if she were middle class, as
Mm,
opposed to incredibly wealthy. And at a certain point, she realized that they were not going to give her money, which was, it's a very interesting way to handle it. I'm not sure I would do that. But she did something that I think we all need to do at whatever scale. And she decided that she was going to leverage her relationships with people who had money to fund
yeah.
radical social change movements.
Yeah.
So she came together with other people who had leverage with wealth and supported Occupy Wall Street, supported
Yeah.
BLM, and many other social change movements. And I think that is one element of what we need to be doing. We need to be using our money to support the people who are, and ourselves included, who are transforming this culture or demanding that it be transformed. And that
Mhm.
could be supporting a movement like BLM, that could be supporting a candidate, somebody running for office that we think is unbelievably good and is going
Mm.
to speak our truth. That could be making sure that in our own families, we are helping everyone, not just in our nuclear family, but even on out to the best of our ability to become independent, self sustaining, to really know their worth and their value. Um, and I think also to have a critique of capitalism and to have
Yeah.
a critique, really of all of the current economic systems that are based on a kind of exploitation of both the planet and um, and us as human beings. I think a lot about being a mother and
Mhm.
how I'm fundamentally raising the next generation of workers who are going to serve in this next generation of the economy. And the fact that I am not remunerated for doing that essential work of
Yeah.
creating the people that are going to drive the future economy of not just my country, but the world is really a problem, and understanding the ways in which our different work, especially for women and marginalized people of all kinds, is undervalued and not seen or appreciated. So it's about different actions, behaviors, and about a different kind of consciousness and ability to speak about those disparities whenever we're asked to, and sometimes when we're not. You know,
Yeah.
um, so I have a lot of admiration for many in my son's generation, millennial cohort, who I think have reached a kind of mass, or many have progressive, many have reached a level of questioning of
Mhm.
capitalism and,
Yeah.
and its mechanisms that I really find um, deeply important, and are going into the workforce with different expectations about the responsibilities of companies, the way they
Yeah.
want to work in a more humanistic way, um, the way they don't feel isolated or in a bubble and
Mm.
removed from the suffering of others. My son, I just went through a hilarious but also very, inspiring conversation with him about prom.
Oh.
He does not believe in buying new clothes because he is very against fast fashion and
Good
the
for
way in
him.
which it exploits labor and the planet. And he wanted to completely thrift his outfit for prom. And I said, well, I hear you. And he said, the cotton is grown and picked by slave labor in China. The workers who sew the clothes are making, $2 at most a day
Yeah.
in terrible conditions. The big corporations that then sell them are making a tremendous profit and supporting some of the most, horrendous, horrific, authoritarian leaders in the country. So he does not want to be a part of that cycle. And I think
Wow.
that's really great. I mean, he's 18.
Yeah.
So, that is the kind of thinking about money that gives me a great deal of hope. And also I like the way he's communicating with his partner around gender and how they approach money together. And
Mm.
um, I think he comes up, and I think a lot of young people are coming up against old ideas about money and sort of, so he's the guy and he should pay for everything, and then
Mm.
what does that mean about her position in the relationship, and he's committed to interrogating those ideas. To me those are like ancient ideas. It's like, what? we, you know but for this generation, I've really come to realize that a lot of the things that we take for granted as children of various movements, even though we've tried our best,
Mhm.
there's a kind of, conservative backsliding, as we can see all over the world. And I'm happy to see young people challenging that.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And thank you so much for bringing this up because it was definitely up on what I wanted to ask, which was, obviously, we know for a fact capitalism does not serve women or minorities. I'm like, this is just proven. So, do we work with the system or do we find something completely new?
Well, I am of the mind that we do both, that we have to do
Mhm.
both. I mean, I know that sounds like an easy answer, but at the same time, we are living within a capitalist system, whether
Mhm.
people are calling, I mean, socialist democracies to me are kind of ideal, but they also have their challenges,
Yeah.
this world in which I live is a kind of hyper late stage capitalism. We are in it. I think that um we have to bring these other expectations and demands into it, and within it we will transform it. I don't really think that anybody in the near future is going to completely dismantle capitalism from the outside. I think
Mm.
that we are all so embedded within it now. There is no outside, So it's about
Yeah.
every choice you make, every purchase you make, every
Yeah.
job you take, every conversation you have, everything you can do, at least to be aware of
Yeah.
the economic ramifications and the way that it affects different people around the world. I was listening to a really wonderful conversation yesterday about electric vehicles
Mm.
and the batteries that it takes to run them. And we think
Yeah.
about, as you know all this, but we think about electric as being this, it's going to save us, blah blah, and it may save some things, but we need to really be aware of the ways in which the extraction of minerals is affecting human rights, is
Yeah.
affecting the earth, is, if we do not regulate the recycling of these batteries, we are going
Yeah.
to have a calamity of epic proportion. The ways in which geopolitics are now circling, around this green energy idea,
Yeah.
so even when you buy that electric car or you rent it or you support it, I believe in that, but I think that we need to do that understanding the big picture,
Yeah.
so that when we get into that car, we don't have a sense of, oh, we're doing the perfect thing here for everybody. No, it's a little more complicated, and
Mhm.
you have to make a kind of informed decision, about these things. I basically want people just to be
Mhm.
awake, to the supply chain, to the way in which this world is affecting, and then make a decision. Who do you want to be in the context of this system? You know, are you going
Yeah.
to be a part of the change? What is the change? You know, so these are the kinds of conversations that are important to have, and I think the book is really attempting again to create a space for us to even have those conversations, so that we're not just sort of stuffing or not talking about it because it's scary or we're not supposed to, but to instead feel very comfortable and confident talking about the financial systems in which we live and which affect our bodies and our minds and our families. And the more equipped we are, the more able we will be to change minds and policies and structures. If not, we have no voice.
No, I hundred, yeah, I really agree with you because obviously this is all within a system, and I think that's what was so important about reading all the different stories because it is you can see the structural system that they're kind of talking within, and and I thought, okay, no, it's fascinating, and it's interesting. You were talking about writing a book, and I did see now that people are using AI and Chat GPT to write books, which is a whole other thing. But I heard your next stage is that you're writing another novel. So I'm assuming that's going to be done the organic way. So yeah, what's next on your plate, anyways?
Well, that is definitely going to be done the organic way, and it's already taking me forever. Um, A Day is an autobiographical novel. It's autofict, as we call it, and I am writing another piece like that. I'm also doing the
Mm,
second volume of Black Cool, which is another collection that I care very deeply about. Black Cool, the first volume, is really about understanding the ways in which African culture and religion, West African in particular, has traveled um, through the Afro Atlantic experience. So that it's an idea that cool is a cultural product of West Africa, and that there is an
mm,
entire cosmology of cool that we have yet to excavate. So the book is composed of different elements: audacity, reserve, resistance, community, all of these different elements that I think I wanted to give as tools to young Black people and marginalized people to use as their sort of tools of survival, the ways that people have used them for thousands of years. In some ways, like yoga is a cultural product of India, you
yeah.
could think of as cool as a cultural product. So I'm doing a second volume of that, which is
Oh,
grounded in the future, because I think that many young people are struggling with even believing that there will be a future. And I feel that we need to believe that there will be a future, because there will be in one form or
mhm,
another. So I'm thinking about how these interventions that our ancestors have used for so long will manifest in the future.
mm,
I'm also developing several TV and film projects, both based on my work and not. Um, I produced a documentary called This Is Personal about Women's March a couple of years ago. I'm developing a series based on Black, White, and Jewish. I
mm.
worked on a great show that with Amazon that may or may not happen. I mean, the film and TV business is very interesting. But I'm really interested in that space. I think we're doing a podcast around Black Cool. That'll
Oh,
be coming
cool.
soon. I think it's important to have meaningful conversations like the ones we're having right now.
Mm,
Um, and again, as I said earlier, I'm in this deep project of getting my son off to college. I think parenting is something that people think of as sort of adjacent to work, but I think of it as really a full-time job. And if we want to parent well, we have to really pay attention,
yeah.
especially now. And that takes a lot of stamina, you know. So yeah, there's lots going on. I could go on and on, but I feel very fortunate that my life is full, and that I'm really trying, like the rest of us, to make conscious, strategic, satisfying, holistic decisions.
Mm. Thank you so much. I'm like that's wonderful and I'm so excited to hear about even all your other projects that's going on, and hopefully we get to talk about Black Cool as well in the future when you're back with it, and also the second part of A Day maybe.
Yes, who knows?
Yeah,
Yes,
and so I'd love to talk to you about it because I think it's a fascinating subject about, yeah, exactly the products that have come out from the origin regions, if you could say. So
yes,
so it's
exactly.
it's and hit the nail on the head with cool and yoga, because these are similar kind of products that have come away from our lands of origin.
Yes, and they've been exploited and appropriated in very interesting ways, that I think deserve interrogation. So it's a big
Absolutely,
conversation, and I'm
it
here
is.
for it, honey. I'm here for it. This is my work in the world. So it's wonderful to find um, readers and thoughtful humans like you who want to make space and find audiences and connect with these ideas. And, you know, this is critical work that you're doing.
Well, it's
Um,
critical work that you're doing, and all I want to do is just give a platform because, as you say, it's such an important conversation, and people need to be having it. And I feel like sometimes we're not,
we're not.
so
We're
we're
not.
not.
And even if people just listen to this and take away, one thought about the way they are holding their ideas about money and what those are and how they may be transmitting those to their children or to their coworkers or to their colleagues, and just to think about, what that means, and do they want to change it, even if just that,
Yeah.
is a lot. Um, so I think I'm very happy to talk to you.
Oh,
Very.
amazing. Thank you so much, Rebecca. I really appreciate it. It's such a pleasure to have you here and talk about such a great book. And
Thank
so,
you.
thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.